Welcome to the Art and Alchemy Lab, a podcast that explores transformation through creativity. I am your host, Allison Adams. I will be speaking with modern alchemists, artists, healers, and visionaries who have learned to transmute lead into personal growth and spiritual gold. Hi, everyone. If you've been listening for a while, you may have heard me mention the Gene Keys a few times. As a Gene Keys student and guide myself, this system has been a profound pathway in my own life of healing and community. And today, I am thrilled to finally dive deep with someone who knows this system far better than I do. Our guest today is Elijah Parker, CEO and seasoned Gene Keys Voyager, and a core member of the leadership team. Elijah blends creative design, mythical storytelling, event production, and intermodal expressive arts with 12 years of deeply integrating the Gene Keys into his life. Elijah has a unique ability to convey profound truths spontaneously and gracefully, drawn from his personal journey of growth. But before we dive in, there's a new Gene Keys Golden Path online retreat starting in January that I'd like to tell you about. So if you'd like to deepen this wisdom along with me, these retreats offer a rich community learning experience. I will be facilitating a special adjunct group with my fellow guide, Karina Doan. For details, visit AllisonAdams.net or check the episode page for links to this retreat and your free Gene Keys profile. And if you just want to know more about the Gene Keys in general, this is the episode for you. So without further ado, let's welcome Elijah. Hello, Elijah Parker.
Hello.
Thanks so much for taking time to talk to me today. And where are you calling from?
I am in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The beautiful fall colors turning into the winter snow.
Is that where you're from?
No, I'm from Texas, but I moved here. My lovely wife got a master's degree in costume design, so I'm
Oh,
just on
cool.
a little
Oh, now I want
adventure
to talk
here.
to her.
Fair enough. She's more fascinating than I am, that's for
Why is
sure.
she doing costume design? Is she like a theater person?
She is. She's an exquisite theater and film costume designer. She had worked in the field for many years, but was ready to take it to the next level to both teach and do it on a wider scale. So.
Oh, that's very cool. Well, I was a theater person. And I think once you're a theater person, you kind of see life as a stage, right? The
Definitely.
Shakespeare. So I know you from the Gene Keys. Well, you don't know me so much, but you are a CEO now of the Gene Keys, president, vice
Yeah,
president.
CEO, absolutely. Creator, and yeah.
Yeah. And I met you on my first activation sequence. You probably don't remember because it was like during the pandemic, I believe. And so for those that don't know about the Gene Keys, we're going to be talking about some of this on this episode, but it's so complex and wonderful. I don't even know where to jump in. So I'm going to start with how we met, how I remember you. There was this breakout room. There were all these people from all over the world coming to learn about the Gene Keys and the activation sequence. I think it was in the life work sphere. And you were in a room in the call with me and two other people. And you wrote a poem for each of us about what we were sharing in that group. And it was such an intimate, sweet experience to have someone listen to what you're saying and then write it back in poetry form in that time. Nobody asked you to do it. I don't know. I just kind of put that around you. I have that memory around you. I don't know what I did with the poem.
It's actually really precious because I do remember that moment. That's not something I did ever again, I don't think. So
Yeah.
it's really special that you reached back out because it's a moment in time that we
Yeah.
had.
I loved it. Anyway, so today let's just start with the alchemy card that I chose for you, and then we'll get more into other things. So I'm going to pull up this particular card so you can see it. This is the card of ether and the quinta essentia, which we could also call the quintessence.
Mhm.
What do you see here?
Well, it's incredible because you have these alchemical symbols of the four elements as they merge into that quintessential fifth element of ether. But I love that there's this essence that's actually emerging and flowing all around, as opposed to these separate elements. It's actually this like weaving, cascading, and flowing energy. The elements aren't so separate, even though many esoteric systems and pathways constantly put them at these different corners of the room. All elements are dancing with each other, and smoke is kind of one of those of how air and fire and water and earth are all moving. So I really think it speaks to that invisible place,
Mm-hmm.
instead of making these like four divisions. It's actually the union of them.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny, I'm looking at this and remembering I actually pulled a different card for you yesterday to look at. So we're going to actually do two of them.
Fantastic. Love it.
Because when I first contacted you, this was the one in my mind. And then later on, I gave you another one. This picture also has like two triangles that are inverted, like one's going up and one's going down, and the little mini triangles around it. Um, the six-pointed star is a very ancient symbol that shows up in a lot of religions and mystic thought, and is often something people are intimidated by as well,
Hmm.
because it is very powerful. I love how you notice that the movement on the outside of the bottle, it seems more dynamic than what's inside, but it starts inside the bottle, doesn't it?
Definitely.
So, do you mind if I read this one to you and then I'll read
Yes,
the
of
other one?
course.
Okay,
Sounds good.
let's see. I start with a quote. Stop acting so small. You are the universe in ecstatic motion, by Rumi. According to ancient and medieval science, the fifth element, or quintessence, is the material that fills the region of the universe beyond the terrestrial sphere. It was believed to be naturally bright, incorruptible, and moved in a circular pattern. It was the pure essence of all things and the substance of the heavenly bodies. The scientist and secret alchemist Sir Isaac Newton believed that the quintessence was the spirit of all the elements when mixed together. The Hindus called the fifth element Akasha, the essence of all living things, and the energy that resides in all the places and planets of existence. The Greeks believed it was the pure breath of the gods. The fathers of modern medicine saw the fifth element as the substance of stars and souls. Astrophysics speaks of dark matter, the invisible substance that makes up 85% of the universe as they understand it. This spirit-esque element that doesn't fit into clear definition points to the divine spark that each of us carries inside. What else fills the space between even our tiniest cells as they bounce against each other? Whether this carries a piece of all the other elements inside of it, or if all the elements merge to create the quintessence, doesn't really matter. All we can do is contemplate this mysterious bridge between the material world and the vast unknown.
Beautiful.
So you can comment on that if there's anything that comes to mind.
Yeah, I'm glad that it speaks to the liminal space in between. When I was, younger in my learning of these different esoteric and elemental pieces, it helped me to separate. That's a natural part of the alchemical process, as you learn the individual ingredients of the stew that you were putting all together when you create something or when you make magic. But it's that in between space. There's so much intelligence, even in our literal cells. Like the intelligence of the cell isn't just the DNA, it's the cellular membrane, it's the in between of our boundary systems. And so each element has its own magic. Fire has its magic, earth has its magic. But in those in between spaces, there's the intelligence of transferring and learning from and
Mm,
growing together and weaving. I think that's the mystery of the universe, that we can't know everything, because the liminal has the power of the mystery itself.
mm. As you're saying that, and I'm looking at this sort of geometry on here, again, going back to the geometry of the gene keys and how there's this elegant balancing, just the path of it. There's so many paths that go from one place to another, and you can travel lots of different ways. For example, if you're looking at a star, you can see how the line would go across one point to the other. And so often we'll focus on, like, oh, this is what it looks like. This is how I relate to this. This is my persona that I'm putting in the world, my understanding.
Mm.
And then in order to get to another place of understanding with yourself, you have to go through that liminal place, the path that draws the line from one point to another. And
That's really where it happens, isn't it? Is the movement, ecstatic motion.
Absolutely. I don't think revelation is a fixed state. So to really come alive, you have to follow that pathway, that flow. But it's beautiful to know the structure. And I think that's the balance here is structure and flow. You have the geometry providing these incredible points of structure, and
Mm,
then the remembrance that ether is this ever-flowing, spiraling connection between the two. And that's what in the Gene Keys, when you look at the Merkaba, the six-pointed star, it's called the star pearl, and there's an element there of fortune and flow makes fortune.
mm,
So structure and flow makes fortune, and that aspect of we need to understand the container. This is true of all magic, right? You need a potion bottle here or a cauldron, and you have to have the boundary system of this physical body to allow flow to really
mm,
bubble up and release itself. And so I think there's a really beautiful thing there of the balance between those elements.
hmm. Yeah, I love the way you put that. Okay, I'm going to look at the next one. Let's see how connected they are. This is the one I gave you yesterday. Curiositas and inquirio.
Well, I love that curiosity and inquiry and playful curiosity is such a core value for me. Again, back with the liminal space, the mystery of the world. It can be terrifying to be in the mystery of the world, but playful curiosity and the courage to inquire, to ask within, is to walk that pathway. And so to have the labyrinth there in the center, what I love about the labyrinth as a meditative quality is that mazes, if you know, like when I was a kid and you draw and try to get out of the maze, a maze has dead ends. A maze has a wrong turn. A labyrinth doesn't have a wrong turn.
Mm,
It's one foot in front of the other. You're always on the way home to center.
mm,
And the level of faith that that kind of evokes in the physical body, so that you can actually just be curious. You can be playful. You can be open to the mystery because one foot after the other, we're always spiraling home to the
mm,
center of who we are. And the truth of inquiry for me, that asking ourselves the honest questions, asking of the universe the deep questions, is the labyrinth that we're actually on to come home to truth instead of to finally fix or beat the maze or escape the challenges of the world.
mm. Yeah, as you're talking about that, I'm picturing how it would look if this labyrinth was on the outside of the bottle rather than on the inside. And that is usually what we do, isn't it? We kind of go and seek our path and go around and around and around. And a lot of times it does bring us back to where we started. I definitely live in an area that I started in, and I've left many times and I've come back many times. And then I go outside on that other path and I come back. But I hadn't thought of this before. It kind of reminds me the image of the labyrinth because it's one of those round ones. It looks like a thumbprint,
Mm,
which also implies, the uniqueness of each person's personal complexity and home, which is great. I love it when I see things I didn't see in my own art before.
it's beautifully said. I love that.
So maybe that's what I have to do is just look at my thumbs more often to ground myself and pull myself back. So I'll try not to read all of it because I want to hear more about you, but I'll go back to some of it. Once we believe in ourselves, we can risk curiosity, wonder, spontaneous delight, or any experience that reveals the human spirit. And that's by E. E. Cummings.
Mm.
And you said something about being that child and being in that wonder and spontaneity. Children are naturally curious because they have an innate desire to explore and learn about the world around them. At this stage of life, we are full of wonder and inquiry, but over time, our worldview gets set, and we may even be conditioned against curiosity and inquiry, assuming our own knowledge is correct. Maybe it feels safer that way, or maybe we just get lazy. But curiosity is how our brains stay active. In many ways, the process of learning new things and unlearning old things keeps us young, or at least aging gracefully. The Japanese word soshin, did I say that right?
I don't know.
You don't
That
know?
sounds.
Okay, good. That's good. The Japanese word soshin is a concept from Zen Buddhism meaning beginner's mind. Imagine having an open and eager attitude to a new concept rather than cynicism or suspicion. This counters the arrogant idea that the knowledge we have is enough, that our worldview is the best, that it's better to be right than to be kind. Being curious and allowing new perspectives to enter your awareness pushes against the entrapments of binary thinking, which leads to the isms, fundamentalism, racism, sexism, ageism, etc. Many realities can exist at the same time, and holding curious space with both ands keeps our brains supple and our nervous system relaxed. This practice breaks down unsustainable patterns of thought, but also helps build healthy new ones. Stay curious. It may be the fountain of youth. And the great scientist Marie Curie said, "Nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood. And now is the time to understand more so that we may fear less."
Hmm. Beautiful. It's incredible writing. I really appreciate there's some really important teachings there. I love that at the fountain of youth, that curiosity can be for us.
I
Mm.
think it is. I think it
Hmm.
is. I see myself doing that sometimes as I get older, and I think of my grandparents doing the same thing where, like, maybe they had a star fruit for the first time. Someone in the neighborhood brought a star fruit over, and they just were in their late 80s dancing around this fruit like it was the most interesting thing. They couldn't believe it. Have you ever seen this? And I think when you're that old, it's really exciting to see something you've never seen before. And then the child comes back out, and I find myself doing that sometimes, like, wow, have you ever seen that before? And I think it's fun. It's fun to take
Absolutely.
delight.
Yeah, like you said, it's the opposite of contracting because if I know something, there's no room for that liminal. There's no
Mhm.
room for that mystery. There's no room for delight. Delight is fresh. It is
Mhm.
pushing up from the ground in a new way. And I
Mhm.
think that balance of where we can love cycles, but you can see it with that freshness instead of seeing it, oh, that's the same old thing. That's the
Mhm.
same old sunrise
Mhm.
versus the
Yeah.
incredible magic of seeing it fresh
Yeah.
inside yourself.
Can you imagine if every time your wife came in the door, you acted like it was the first time you saw her? Well, you don't want to act like you don't know her, but like you just acted with that glee of, wow, you're here.
It is a very real practice. I love that example. I really try that when I notice I've gone back into a habit. There's a phrase that was really core to me for a long time is when ritual becomes habitual, it loses its meaning.
Mm.
And I noticed that same thing. Things that you love. I love tea, things that you love to do every day. Ritual is very fresh. You
Mm.
can walk the steps on the labyrinth. You're consciously putting one foot after the other. A ritual of greeting my wife when she comes home can be this celebration instead of that habit that
Yeah.
crystallizes, that slows down. So I really love that example. I think it's a good aspiration to always have that freshness when we approach things we love.
So when I sent you that card yesterday, you said the labyrinth had been an important symbol for you, and actually it brought you to the gene keys. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, the labyrinth, it's been a part of my life in many different ways, but how it brought me to the Gene Keys is I was building something called the Phoenix Labyrinth at the time with a collaborator of mine, and it was a revelation that our life is a game. It was the game of life. It was recognizing that we're all inside this theater, inside this living lucid dream. And so we would use the elements of fire, earth, air, and water, and we'd build these little worlds. And I don't mean like playing a game where you roll the dice or you put your little figure on the board game, but that you'd go to the grocery store and know that you are a secret agent of love, here to find something creative and share it with someone in their real world. And they may never see you again, but you could make one tiny act
Mm.
of creation and it would ripple out into the world. It would transform like the phoenix. And so with the labyrinth, to trust in the game of life, to dare to be curious was a big part of that labyrinth. And I literally would walk labyrinths at every city that I would go visit. And I was on this tour that led me up to the Northwest, that led me to meet my partner at the time, who had this Dragonfly book of the Gene Keys. And suddenly there was a structure where the Golden Path, which is something in the Gene Keys, it's a profile that gives you your unique archetypes to explore inside yourself. And suddenly there was structure to this game of life that I didn't have myself. It became infused with this mythos inside myself. I'd wanted a way that people could transform in their own daily life without me needing to be the source or some guru needing to be the source or some, thing they had to do. It was a living library, and it would point them inward to that labyrinth inside the potion bottle instead of out there. And so literally it became a big part of my community, my art and music community, as we would walk the golden path. We even physically made a labyrinth made out of the Gene Keys Golden Path so that you could walk on our land, because we had a small permaculture home and land. You could walk your archetypes. So it wasn't just a mental story out there. It was a physical act of creativity. So it was just so beautiful that you sent this labyrinth to me as we opened the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, to even be able to go to different towns that have labyrinths is kind of special. I don't even know where I would look, especially in
They're
America.
hidden. They're at churches. They're at little
Uh,
meditation centers. And sometimes they're built by people in parks that you don't notice until you notice.
mm,
So it was part of my game to go
yeah,
find labyrinths.
yeah. I have a friend, we took a walk on the beach one time, and she's really into making walking mandalas. And she made a spiral labyrinth, or maybe I made it, and she kind of directed me with rocks that I'd found. And I walked in it, and then I walked out. And she was saying in that kind of labyrinth, and maybe all labyrinths, that there's a certain direction that you turn. Like if you're going counterclockwise or clockwise, it has to do with walking towards yourself and then a releasing, like
Mm.
bringing in and then a releasing, I guess, because you have to walk both ways, right?
It's really true. As you turn your body, it reminded me that the wound is wound up energy,
Mm,
right? Often turning inward for a lot of people at first is a very scary or honest way of looking at the wound, at the shadow. And so we have to curl inward, like we go into the fetal position when we're scared or sick. We curl inward in order to unwind, to actually
mm,
release back out. Let's pull in the energy that we want. We want, even the fetal position. We're pulling inward to receive from the umbilicus, right? To receive nourishment
mm.
from the womb. We want to bring in good energy into our bodies. And then we want to express this energy and create back out in the world. So I think it's always good to see that turning inward and outward and listening to what the body is saying when it
Yeah.
does these very physical motions.
No, that's really wonderful. And actually, embodiment is a word that gets thrown around a lot, but then it becomes a mental word that gets thrown around a lot, and it doesn't have a lot of meaning because we're just talking about it again. So I like the reminder of the simple walking circles with intention, or small
Yeah.
things like that, the ritual. And obviously, if it's not in your own yard that you do every single day, you have more chance to keep it fresh. You're like walking with your phone while you're scrolling and texting. It doesn't really work if you do the same thing all the time because it loses the specialness of
Mm.
bringing you to yourself. You get distracted again. So let me ask you a little more about the Gene Keys because I'm a Gene Keys guide. I have been for, I think, 4 years, and I'm going to be involved in the next rollout of the activation sequence. And you can share more about that. But I also haven't really explained how the Gene Keys work. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on. So I thought maybe even with like the activation sequence, you could just tell those who don't know what the setup is.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And it's amazing to have different perspectives because the Jinkies is many different things.
Mhm.
But for me, it is a compass and a guidebook to just remember certain parts of who I am so that I have words to help myself remember when I'm stuck in the shadow, when I'm stuck in my victim state. And so when we look at the activation sequence, kind of like that first image we saw, these elements of who we are, there are these four spheres, these four worlds. And inside each of our profiles is a different number and line, our unique gene key combination, which is the teacher. And it reminds me, inside that world of, say, my life's work, the first sphere is a place where what is it that I express out into the world? What are my challenges with feeling my natural self? Or am I living shining out into the world, or am I living contracted and
Mhm.
stuck? And how often, even day to day, we go back and forth between that pendulum. Someone cuts us off in traffic, and we can feel the shadow, the constriction, like that turning inward. It can sometimes contract in our bodies. So the Gene Keys reminds us that the shadow, that contraction, isn't a negative or evil or wrong thing about us. It's not that we're broken. It's a teaching encoded in contraction. It's a teaching encoded in constriction. And that the gift isn't something that we have to get from someone else or that we have to suffer in order to see, but that it's a seed inside that shadow. That actually the same energy of our shadow is a potential creative offering. And so the Gene Keys lays out these words, these simple words sometimes that remind us that there's a pathway to make a creative change with our challenges in life. And when you walk the golden path, which just means you look at those words, you listen to the audio or the book, but most importantly, you contemplate what does that word mean and feel like in my life? What does stress mean to me in my life? And what does stillness mean to me in my life? And what's the relationship that those two words are teaching me right now? And we take the time that it takes, sometimes a day, sometimes a month, sometimes a year, to sit with that archetype and let it teach me through the magic of contemplation, of pausing long enough to release the wisdom that I have inside myself. And so the Gene Keys for me is simply a structure, a game, a map that I get to walk that labyrinth of myself because it doesn't do the work for me, but it does point to really helpful reminders that when I'm in my shadow, it's hard to see sometimes. And the wisdom of that poetry and that mythos just gives me some context to, oh, right, I'm not just that challenge.
Mhm.
I am the whole spectrum from shadow to gift to city to enlightened essence. I get to do that as my life's work of seeing that shadow become a gift.
Mhm. Kind of reminds me of looking at that first image with the Quinta Essentias, all the stuff in here, and then seeing all of the essence coming out of it and making its own magic into the world. Um, the shadow, I think, is doing its job if it's hiding. I mean,
Mhm.
a shadow that doesn't hide isn't a very good shadow. So some of the shadow names that are given can be very difficult to understand, or say you're giving basically all of these spheres have a shadow, a gift, and a city, which is almost like the best of the best, like the divine moments of purity that happen in our gifts, but don't necessarily stick because we're human. Like pure love or pure peace or something like that. But the shadow often doesn't seem like the opposite of the gifts. You're given these words to chew on, and you might feel pretty good about the gift. Like, hey, I like that. But I don't relate to codependence, for example. Like I have codependence as a shadow somewhere in the area of my life that was developed between 8 and 14 years old. So my emotional quotient when I was just dealing with expression through emotion, pretty much. And you're learning to do that in that time, but it kind of stays with you. So I have this gift of sensitivity, which is really cool because I was always told being sensitive wasn't a gift. So I'm like, oh, that's not the shadow, that's the gift. Great. But underneath that is the shadow of codependence, which I did not relate with at all. And took me kind of years to even figure that out until I went to a therapist that started giving me all these books on codependence. And then I realized, oh, it's not like needing somebody. You can be hyper independent. It's putting yourself below someone else's needs and not having boundaries around that. So you can't really come like you're in the labyrinth. It's very hard to come back to yourself and your own vessel because you're lost on someone else's emotional labyrinth, kind of. So just that's one example of where it took me a long time to chew on that word. So the more esoteric the words you get may end up being the most rich to follow because you go down into that maze and you realize, oh, I am that way. And I just felt it come out while I was in an interaction with somebody and they just came out in front of me and I saw my codependence for the first time. And that's like finding the shadow. Don't be scared. Just know that's what it looks like. So when it comes up next time, you can respond accordingly instead of like mess everything up and have to go back and undo it all again. So do you have any words that you have come to in particular that you had to do that chewing and chewing until you found it? Can you give me an example?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that's the courage to be curious with those words is so critical. And so for me, it was greed. It's right there in my life's work. I remember when I first read my Jinkies and I was like, I'm not greedy. I'm like the opposite of that, back to codependence. I put my needs below everyone else's needs. But when I started to chew, as you said, really like savor this words, when you have the courage to be curious, because obviously there was a trigger there for me. It was like, oh, well, I'm not greedy. You could see the body says something, it reacts against it, or even when you're just confused, like that doesn't feel like me. So inquire into that experience, right? Be curious of that experience. Well, what does that word bring up for me? And for me, greed, like asking that question, like, oh, well, what does that bring up for me? Well, it brings up my insecurities. Like, what would I be greedy for? Oh, I wanted attention when I was a kid, or I grew up very poor, so I wanted more things because that meant safety. So suddenly, greed doesn't have to just mean I'm a corporate tyrant trying to climb over other people with no regard for other humanity. Actually, it's this deep dragon in me that was hungry for something. And when that hunger got put to something greater, that's when the gift of aspiration, it's like, oh no, be the greedy dragon. It's important to want things, to want us all to rise together. I want more money so that everybody flourishes. I
Mhm.
want more time so that everybody has more creative essence and ability to play together. So suddenly that greedy dragon, it's actually vital to be with the shadow, to be in relationship with it. And I think it's so powerful, like with codependence, sometimes the other word might bring insight. So, oh, I don't respond to how it's a reactive version of greed, but the repressive version of greed is a lack of ambition. Oh, I'm not good enough to
Mhm.
rise up that ladder. And you can feel where sometimes our shadows, we purposefully hide from them. As you said, the shadow hides from our awareness.
Mhm.
So to have the courage to inquire, the courage to ask that question. That for me is the contemplative process. And now that shadow becomes my teacher because I notice when I get constricted in my breath because I'm scared of that greed. So I might not say something that is absolutely true to every particle of my being, but I'm afraid of appearing greedy or I'm afraid to be feeding someone else's greed.
Mhm.
I'm
You're like
scared of that.
sensitive to
Yeah.
greed.
Absolutely. And sensitive to codependence, as you said, right? Like you
Mhm.
can now feel it in the field because it's a
Yeah, I don't like when people
quality.
do. So what is the gift of that greed
Yeah,
feeling?
aspiration. And I love what you said. They're not really opposites. It's like it's not greed to selflessness or something like that. It's actually greed to aspiration, which is all the way to ascension, that highest state. And it's the pushing upward of the Kundalini serpent inside our spine aspiring to grow higher.
Mhm.
Or you don't call a plant greedy for wanting water and sun to
Mhm.
grow strong, right? So there's this like, yeah, you need things to grow upward. But do you take more than you need? Maybe then you can explore greed in a little bit of a different
Yeah.
context, right?
Yeah. And some of the words are kind of they're kind of epic. They're words that we don't always use. Like I don't use the word aspiration a lot. I know what it means. I just don't throw it around in my vocabulary. I can read it in a book, right? I might, we might think differently about some of the words, like when I think greed. I'm not thinking of greed as somebody who wants more life,
Yeah.
more breath. Elizabeth Barrett Browning said, "He who has the most life breathes the most air." Isn't that great? It's like more and more. That's the spark, right? That's the divine spark of our spirit and breath that keeps us going. It makes me think of in Dead Poets Society when he's like, suck the marrow out of life. That's what I think of when I think of that little plant that wants to grow. I don't look down on it. I'm like, yeah, take
Yeah.
up as much space as you need. There's enough for all of us.
And that I think is the gift state knows, and the acidic state, that highest state, it knows that as a truth, as a fundamental truth. There is enough for us. The shadow as a consciousness doesn't know that. It thinks it's separate. It thinks it's not enough. It thinks there won't be enough. And that's why we see humanity push each other down for resources. That's why greed is a shadow, not to just romanticize it. It's also what causes harm to other humans, plants, the world. It is disharmony. So it's important to learn. This is a part of the shadows. There's a romanticizing of, yeah, the shadow is doing its job. There's a part of suffering that is helping us to grow, blah, blah, blah. It's also killing people. It's also hurting our bodies.
It's a
And
villain.
it is, of course. So in the
Mhm.
greater context of the theater, yeah, the villain's a part of the play.
Mhm.
But in the context of what is the villain's purpose? What is the foil's purpose? Oh, I need to give you this extreme version of feeling lost, alone, scared, angry, victimized, so that I can learn, yeah, I do want to suck the marrow out of life, but not at the expense of others' happiness. An aspiration cannot grow if it is doing it at the expense of someone
Right.
else's
Or
happiness.
gluttony. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna have all the marrow for myself and can't
Yes.
move. Whoa. Wow. It's so interesting too to think of how we're all going through this, whether or not you're conscious of it. And so another thing I really like about the gene keys, even though it's an individual path for yourself, you and I don't really know each other, but we could probably sit here for hours just sharing our own gene keys and what we've learned. And it's a nice playing field. It sounds complicated at first, but the language very quickly becomes this creative connection with other people to quickly understand them. And by quickly, I mean just it's more intimate,
Mm.
giving you more information. And I think for me, that's really, I like that. It makes me feel safer in the world when I can know who people are because they're actually telling me who they are. I'm not making assumptions. They're telling me who they are in a vulnerable way, and then I can meet them there. But a lot of times we don't have that language. We don't know. We look at outward appearance. Oh, your hair looks great. Oh, it seems like you make this much money. Oh, you seem nice because you've got pets. We don't really know, but this little extra can really open yourself up. But you're learning about others while you're sharing about yourself. And to think of all of this in our DNA means there's shadows in all of our DNA, and these gifts are in all of our DNA, even if people don't know about them. And in this period, I'm just thinking the greed in your shadow of your life work. I mean, all you have to do is look at American politics at the moment. That greed is probably the word that we would think of, the first word. At the moment, everything's kind of open like that, right? It's very clear. Oppression is in
Mm.
my life work. And I'm very aware of constant oppression. I don't always feel that I'm oppressed. I just feel the oppression around me. I think about family histories of oppression or the groups of people. And so I get really sluggish in that when that's going on. That's also going on in the world right now. So we have these big shadows, and it's just a time of great change. And so much of that has to do with our inner lives changing, our inner DNA bringing up information from the past and greedy for new life and change in the midst of a world that has oppression and greed. But I like the idea of being a part of a collective intention of recognizing these things so that we can move through them and not always be with them. as
Mm.
strongly as we are. Does that make sense?
It does. I really appreciate that. I mean, you started with language and building intimacy and how important that is that we can share this language with the gene keys as a shared dream language to be able to articulate things that are very personalized. But like you said, we all have these shadows. We're feeling that global oppression, whether we're experiencing it individually or not. And sometimes people are more attuned to that actively, consciously, like they can recognize that, but everybody is breathing the same air that has pollutants in it, is drinking the same water that has been both prayed for and is being poisoned at the same time. We
Mhm.
we are an organism, even if we are individuals. And the Gene Keys really responds to that. It's a language that doesn't just stay at the outer layer of the onion or of the labyrinth, color of your hair, how much money do you make. That's great about language. We can stay on the outer layer of the onion as long as we want, but our soul seeks the deeper places, and we're scared but also fascinated with
Mhm.
the depth that's available inside ourselves, and thus with intimacy inside the other person.
Mhm.
And so I think that we have to do that in this time of great change, is we have to learn to look inward with that curiosity and also the dedication and the courage that it takes to be with the waves of oppression, of greed, of stress, of control, of these shadows, because the world's already experiencing it. The world is already sick in a lot of ways. So we're being honest with ourselves with compassion and gentleness, and then we can build these bridges of intimacy with each other of, wow, I know that feeling of shame too. I've had that in my own way. Let's now build a place of universal love
Mhm.
together, of acceptance and beauty and adventure, but we actually have a shared language of something that's technically, you can't ever know everything I've been through. But now we can use these touchstones of our language to build intimacy because I'll also never know everything you've been through, and yet we share growth
Mhm.
together. And that, I think, is the collective's next big leap, is to be able to make these incredible choices of kindness and creativity as a collective, which has to be, sourced by individuals and communities
Mhm.
making those choices more regularly.
Yeah. I love these conversations with the Gene Keys in particular. The essence that comes out of two people coming together with their ideas creates the next version of that idea. So it's always growing. That's something that's really appealed to me because I like to think of myself as sort of a frog on lily pads. I like to jump across the surface and move around. And I don't like to be stuck in the corner of a room. I'm always like to have my eye on the exit sign because I think I have a sort of anti-cult piece. Like, you don't put me
Oh,
in one
100%.
thing. Probably a lot of people that are drawn to the Gene Keys have that. We need a lot of variety, but we also love the great spiritual teachings that
Yeah.
can be brought in. You can look at alchemy, for example. Early Christianity was connected to alchemy. Eventually they shifted, but there was a lot of spiritual power for people in that. And, we have Buddhism, we mentioned earlier, and there's all these wonderful texts,
Mm.
and we're finding a way to bring them back in, but also live lives in a modern, easeful way that isn't held down by all that dogma. So I really enjoy the room to jump around on all of those pathways between the spheres with other people because I don't know, it just helps my anxiety around
Mm.
spiritual things. That
I'd
makes
so resonate with that. A good friend of mine always says, never trust anyone in less than three cults. You have to have multiple cults. But really, the isolationism, the isms that you spoke of
Mhm.
earlier, that
Yeah,
is it forces itself into something that knows something.
yeah.
Whereas when we're open and curious and growing,
Mhm.
you don't want to be held in that way. And I think many of us are allergic to those boxes, whether it's social media putting us in that box or capitalism putting us in our box, or we're supposed to be on a left or a right. Even as kids told not to sing because you don't match the
Right.
quality of what the voice is supposed to sound like.
Or use
We've
your right hand instead of
used
your left. I mean,
Absolutely. Or think in this way, and if you don't, you're stupid.
mhm.
Like how much constriction we put on ourselves to fit into those ideologies versus genius is a natural state of intelligence moving through our unique individual spirit, and that we all have the equal right to express our genius. That's my aspiration, right?
Mhm.
That we live in a culture that has the equal right for the intelligence of our innate, spontaneous being to
Mhm.
be not only allowed, but actually, as you've been describing, can we thrive together by letting these different geniuses come together?
Mhm.
And that's where I see the creative revolution that we are in, even as systems break down and more oppression is actually pushed down on the scale. Sometimes it feels like we're going backwards. I
Yeah.
wake up and read something online. I'm like, really? Like we're
Mhm.
doing that again? But yet,
Timelessness.
thank you, thank you. Let's
What is
enjoy
time? Talk about it,
the
the pathways. We just go back and forth in time. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's just an epic way to look at it. It's playful and it kind of makes us laugh, but the gift in my life work that rises out of the oppression is transmutation and transfiguration, being the city, very high, lofty word, transfiguration. But then I think, oh, actually, transfiguration just means complete change.
Mm,
So transmutation is little changes and transfiguration is big changes. So that guides me through the more oppression I feel. It's almost easier to feel it around me than in me because it's very personal when it's in me. But when I see it happening to other people, I have the confidence to go out and try to help them change things.
mm.
But if we're helping other people first, we're not really coming from any sense of it's going to work because we haven't tried it for ourselves yet.
Very well said.
It may still not work. But one more thing I want to talk about before we go to the artwork is that we are both 6'2" profiles. And for me, that was one of the biggest revelations to discover. A whole nother conversation could be had on that, and we're not going to take much longer. But basically, it means for us that for the first 30 or so years of your life, we're kind of running around experimenting, learning by falling out, making mistakes, taking risks, probably excited about life, curious. And then we hit a certain point around your Saturn return, which is 28, 29, 30, and then we turn inward. It's suddenly not working for us anymore. It's disappointing. It's like we can't handle falling and making any more mistakes. It's expensive, right? And so, like, when am I going to get the one thing that works for me? So then we turn maybe towards a specific path, which may not be our final path, but we need something that's simpler. And so we go up onto what they call the roof, where you look out and you kind of observe. You learn by observing, and you learn by journaling. You learn by taking classes and you're talking to your friends, but you're not going to go out there learning by like jumping into things anymore. Now it's time to just write the book about it. Okay. Then you hit around 50, the Chiron return, and this is when you're younger than me. I'm in my 50s, so I'm already at this point, I guess. Then you realize, oh, I'm ready to go back and join the human race as an embodied human. And the way I look at it is like for the longest time, we didn't accept that we were human. We felt like an alien. Oh, it's because I'm weird. I'm just going to over here. And then after 50 years of kind of watching people, you realize, hey, I might still be an alien, but I think I can fake it. I think I could fake it now. I think I've been watching long enough that I could join the human race as a professional in my field, for example, and just, I'll probably get away with it. And that's why I think that 6'2" life is so interesting if you have that, because it means there's three parts of your life and they're all complete unto themselves. So there's no shame in, having all those false starts and then taking off like a hermit for 20 years. There's no shame in it. Have you found that to be true in your life?
Yeah, it's beautiful to hear. It was funny because I heard the story of a 6'2", those three journeys before my Saturn return. So I knew about it going into those experiences, and I'm not yet in my Saturn return, but everything that you said really resonates. And for me, the place that it's been the most helpful, because it's one of those spiritual truths that keeps happening. Oh, you'll figure it out when you're in your 50s. It's like I got some time that I'd like to be figuring out
Yeah,
something in the
exactly.
meantime. For me, the piece that came of what you started to describe with the alien, it's like, oh, those humans down there, it recognized that I care so deeply about humanity, even while feeling alien. And I care so deeply. And instead of getting lost in my impatience, to trust a little bit deeper that longer story. And in the meantime, plant the seeds and water them and try to practice with them now. Model them not to teach other people, but to live in the way that the intelligence is moving through me. And I love the acceptance that you really spoke of. Oh, I could fake it with the humans. It's can I just be here in my body has been the journey for my six, since actually my defense system was to leave into my head. As you said, watch
I
the
know it
exits.
well.
I am a stand at the back of the room, watch all the exits kind of
Yeah.
person, which is a trauma response. I had a whole lot of trauma in my life, and I took on a lot of emotional, like, weight for that trauma in my life. And so, of course, there's a natural defensiveness there.
Mhm.
And so the invitation to breathe into my body, to be here in my body, to let love know that it is safe to be in my body. That's the journey of the six that I'm so grateful that I'm very much still on, one step of the labyrinth at a time. I'm trying to be here in this world. And I love that you said it's okay. I think that's really the permission that gave is like, it's okay, mind, that you head off into the cosmos when you feel unsafe. It's okay, body, that you're freaking out trying to be human in an inhumane world. To give patience and peace to that, and then to get to live that line too, that passionate nature, to just dance the way that I want to dance while no one is watching, to let that flow move through me and trust in that passionate flow. That has helped give the line six its time
Mhm.
to go
Mhm.
through those transformations.
Yeah, I definitely prefer being in the two than in the six. But that's because that's where it is in my chart. It's different for different people. Um, well, thank you for sharing about that. Now, I would love to hear about the artwork that I asked you to bring in.
Yeah, thank you. You brought the labyrinth to me originally, and immediately what it sparked is when I was younger, I read this book called The Chronicles of Amber. It's a fantasy novel, but it stems from this idea of the pattern, the one true pattern at the heart of all the infinite realities. And these princes and princesses, these beings, are able to walk through shadow. And it was literally the first time I'd ever been taught the word shadow, that there were these infinite parallel realities that were all slightly illusions based off that one true pattern. And it helped give my young forming mind this fantastical journey that there is a pattern to life, that I can learn to cultivate my awareness of patterns, that I can work with my shadows, these constant illusions. They're not me. And that's what is true about our challenges in life. Like that greed isn't me. It's one of the shadows that
Mhm.
I learn to walk through and work with and maybe even create with. So that's what I brought. It was this very impactful story that we live in a mythical world that is balanced between absolute chaos and perfect order, and we are in the infinite shades of gray in between these
Mhm.
larger poles of reality. And not to be so scared of my shadow, but actually to learn to use the shadow to help articulate the world that I want to live in as I go one step at a time back to that labyrinth of the pattern.
Mhm. Gosh, it makes it sound like it's a fun house now. Like you're
That is my absolute aspiration. May we have be in the fun
a house
house
of
of the
mirrors
shadow
in the
work.
garden labyrinth.
You might as well have fun
It's a
because the
game.
adventure's happening. And fun isn't just fantasy as in a shadow of not being here. It's actually, I'm going to engage, I'm going to participate with
Mhm.
the adventure of my life. And now I mean, every day something will happen and I'll collapse into my fear and get sick or get scared or get angry. But I now know too much of my cells have been given the data to know that there's more creative juice in there if I'm willing to really feel
Mm,
it. So the adventure just reminds me that it's not just hard work, it's not just death and taxes, it's not just sacrifice to other people, it's not just be a passive witness of the destruction of the universe, it's participate
mhm, mhm.
in that learning and you'll have more fun. So that's my hope at least.
Yeah, well, we're learning how to be human.
Fair enough.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to put some more information in the notes so they can find out more about the gene keys. And I'm going to be doing an adjunct group to go with the golden path that's coming up. So I'm planning for that. I'm super excited. And
Fantastic.
it's so fun because I met you on the activation sequence and now we're going to do one again. So yeah, I really appreciate your coming and sharing
Mm.
your love and joy and experience with us. Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much for the invitation. And yes, I hope more people come join us on this golden path. So thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Art and Alchemy Lab. If you enjoyed what you heard, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Your likes, shares, and reviews help this podcast to reach more people, and it means the world to have your support. Until next week, stay curious, everyone.